Listen, if you have any advice at all, I would love to hear it. When we have an hour or two to speak as brothers. Advice? Does she like it gentle or rough? A finger in the bum. Not now. We'll talk later.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Season 8 of Game of Thrones now lives in infamy. But the seeds for destruction were planted much earlier. There were signs as early as Season 5. In the books, the Dorne storyline is complex, with some very interesting players. There is a wealth of material there that George wrote, but Benioff and Weiss ignored all of it, and just made the entire plot into a parody.
Let's not do something stupid. That was something stupid.
We have to go, Marcella, now.
You hurt him!
He'll be fine, I promise, but we have to.
Then we had Stannis' rushed and nonsensical demise. It seemed as if Dan and Dave didn't know what to do with him, so they just removed him without much thought. Season 6 was better than 5, but we did have Arya's emergence as a superhero. Stabbed repeatedly in the stomach by the waif with what should be fatal wounds, she managed to not only survive the fall into the water, but she then swam, ran for miles, and then later ridiculously defeated the waif. All of this after being brutally stabbed in the stomach. Yet despite all these problems, it was in Season 7 when the entire narrative began to fall apart. Characters did inexplicable things to meet plot points, and the pacing, which was previously even, and in early seasons often a slow burn approach, changed drastically. We suddenly had characters teleporting from one end of Westeros to the other. Season 6 closed with Cersei ruthlessly grabbing power after annihilating many of her enemies. She didn't intend for Tommen to die, but she still took the throne after his death. Cersei should face severe retaliation for what she did, not only from the other houses in Westeros, but there would be rioting in King's Landing. There was extensive collateral damage from the Sept explosion, and while the audience all knows that Cersei didn't kill her own son to gain power, the people in the story don't have the same knowledge we do.
We had messed up the most kind of obvious storytelling possibility.
Rumors will spread that she murdered her own son. After all, she killed her uncle Kevin in the Sept and Tommen's wife Marjorie, who was admired by the people of King's Landing. So many are going to believe she went all the way. But we don't even get a resistance against her and her rule. To make matters even worse, for her position in Westeros, she allies herself with Euron Greyjoy. This is the same house that Robert and Ned had put down a rebellion from, one that has historically raided and pillaged the coastline. It's going to make her even more hated by the people, yet it's like all of this is happening in a vacuum. And from this point forward, Cersei becomes a figurehead who doesn't do much for the rest of the story. Their handling of Euron reminds me a lot of the farce that they made of Dorne in Season 5.
Got a noble woman to marry back home.
You want a good girl, but you need a bad pussy.
In the books, Euron is a serious, powerful, and ominous figure. Like with Dorne, Benioff and Weiss made him a shadow of what he was in the books and turned him into someone we'd find in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Wet powder.
Wait! We can still use them as clubs!
Season 7 wasn't kind to Tyrion either. He devolved inexplicably from one of the show's most intelligent and strategic characters into a buffoon, who was at times publicly ridiculed for his ineptitude.
The right plan. Your strategy has lost us Dorne, the Iron Islands, and the Reach.
If I have underestimated our enemy...
Our enemies? Your family, you mean?
It all made you wonder if something wasn't going on behind the scenes between Tyrion and Cersei, particularly after the private conversation following the Dragon Pit meeting, but nothing came of that. At the time, I thought the one Lannister who was handled well was Jaime, who finally made the break from Cersei to go up north to help save the realm. But they managed to ruin all of that with everything else in Season 8.
If not for yourself, if not for her, then for every one of the million people in that city, innocent or otherwise.
To be honest, I never really cared much for them. Innocent
or otherwise.
The relationship between Danny and Jon was forced. Even though there was no real chemistry between Emilia and Kit, perhaps it would have worked if this played out over a couple of seasons. But like so much in season 7, it was rushed to get the plot points. They just fast tracked this relationship. They also fast tracked Jon bending the knee. He just became king of the North, and then he quickly relinquished that to Danny. Now, I think this could be something he would eventually do, but time would need to pass. He would have to consult with others, and we need to see it all play out. But since, like with so many other things, it was rushed, it comes out seeming shallow and out of character. This brings us to what I think was the worst part of the season, and that's the suicide trip north to retrieve a white. The mission is another brick in the wall of Tyrion's decline. He knows his sister better than anyone, and he must realize that nothing will move her. The plan is idiotic, too. They take a small band into the White Walkers' territory to retrieve a white. So naturally, once they get there and encounter the dead, the Night King is going to be aware of their presence, and well, that's exactly what happened. The funniest part of this whole scenario is how they send Gendry to run back to the wall. How brilliant, John.
Run, Forrest! Run!
So Gendry just runs and runs. Who wrote this? Yeah, another top-notch job. Not only does Gendry manage to make it all the way back to the wall on foot without collapsing or encountering the dead, but then they're able to relay this news to Dany, who is all the way south in Dragonstone, by cell phone, I guess? And then she's able to leave there and make it to their exact location beyond the wall by using her GPS app in time to save them. Maybe if they had at least decided to do this ridiculous mission with support from the air with Dany on Dragonback from the start, it would have made more sense from a tactical perspective, but the visuals are amazing. There's no doubt about that. If you put your mind on pause, you can enjoy it from that perspective. But even if it had been planned better, with Dany supporting them from the start, it's all still a ridiculous idea because Cersei isn't the type of person you can negotiate with on doing something for the common good. Did they forget she just blew up the Sept? Things weren't any better in Winterfell. They wrote in a contrived plot where there was some sort of friction and problems between Sansa and Arya. This was even less believable than the Jon and Dany relationship. And the only reason they did this was because they needed it as their storyline to bring down Littlefinger. So the characters were casualties for the plot. I went into Littlefinger's demise in more detail in a separate video, which that mess deserved. I'll link it below. But all of this was out of character for him as well. He would have been out of Winterfell right after Jon became king. The warning signs are all there.
To find such chaos in the world, I can only imagine.
Chaos is a ladder.
Suddenly, Peter Baelish has become a moron. But it follows the pattern of Benioff and Weiss in later years. They had trouble writing intelligent characters like Tyrion, Varys, and Littlefinger, and then more complex ones like Euron, who they just turned into a clown.
I'm the man who killed Jaime Lannister.
Spectacle also won out over substance. While I think the Field of Fire episode was largely well done, showing fully what the power of Dany's army was like with the Dothraki charge that was supported by her on Drogon, they still couldn't resist delving into the inane, like Bronn miraculously saving Jaime here from Dragonfire. But what's much worse here is that they managed to swim away in their armor, and Jaime with his golden hand too. You just couldn't make this stuff up. Then, of course, we had the Night King win the gold medal in the javelin. This became a meme after the season, and while it could have been done in a more believable fashion, when you set up a being that is this powerful, it's surely going to take a supreme effort with numerous characters contributing to finally take him down, right? While we're on surprises, we can't forget about Benjen, who just appeared out of nowhere to save Jon. This is even worse than when Jorah was for some reason wandering around the Winterfell battlefield and managed to save Dany. At least we saw Jorah in the episode. Benjen hadn't been around since season 1. Then, of course, we had everyone teleport back from the wall in the next episode to meet in King's Landing with Cersei. This happened throughout the season, characters jumping easily and quickly across the wide expanse of Westeros, and only one of them had a dragon to do it. So these problems in season 7 showed that we were flying in for a rough landing. Some of the issues could have been fixed if everything wasn't so damn rushed. There were bigger problems, though, that more time wouldn't have solved, like dumbing down characters and making them do inexplicable things to hit plot points. They leaned into spectacle over substance. Some of it worked. Visually, the season was great. But a lot of what happened just didn't make much sense. For me, Gendry running back to the wall is the perfect representation of the laziness and decline in quality as Dan and Dave rushed to finish the series. Even with all the glaring mistakes in season 7, most fans still held out hope for a decent ending, and despite the problems I mentioned here, I think competent writers still could have salvaged this mess. But instead, it ended up that season 7 was just a microcosm of the mangled mess that we would see in the final season. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to hit the like button. And if you're interested in more on Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, listen to Caraxes and subscribe. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you soon.